Hey guys, howdy, welcome back. That's right, we're going to be doing a little focus today on television westerns and spotlight on Bonanza and the Cartwrights. So, growing up in the 80s, there was a program that was always on TV, even though it was reruns by that point. It was Bonanza, along with a few others, and of course Little House on the Prairie and all the different, programs that were of a Western genre. And, the funny thing about Bonanza is, I was exposed to it a lot because my grandfather, my late grandfather, Bob Hatch, he was a huge fan. And, my brother and I, we were down there a lot at my grandparents' house, and then we would go to work with my grandpa because he had Action RV down on Live Oak. And we would sit in his office, and he had the TV going. And as kids, during the summer, we didn't have really much to do. So we'd be down there, it was kind of a babysitter situation, whatever. But Grandpa was hilarious. But he always had a Western on, and it was usually Bonanza, and that's what I remember the most of was Bonanza. Drinking water from that Arrowhead cooler, and maybe getting a bag of chips or cookies from the liquor store on the corner there on 10th. Yeah, sometimes it was a styrofoam glider with the little propeller, the old World War II glider planes. Yeah, we tried to have as much fun as we could being trapped there for the entire day. But it was, I reflect upon that as good, with nostalgia and warmness, of course. But anyways, that was my exposure to Bonanza, and for the longest time, clear into my adulthood, I never watched it intentionally because I was, that was just like, oh, it was my grandfather's show, and it just kind of, I don't know, maybe at the time I didn't really reflect upon it as very warm and fuzzy because as a kid, you don't want to be trapped anywhere. You don't be sitting in this little office on a, RV sales lot. We would explore around the lot and, play cops and robbers or whatever with our cap guns. And my cousins lived close by at the time, and we would play with them sometimes. And it was all right. My aunt would make us a sandwich here and there. And my grandfather didn't really believe in lunch, per se. He would have a big breakfast and a big dinner, and that was it. So, yeah, we kind of starved sometimes. But, in the summer it's hot. Really not much air conditioning in that little office, so it got warm in there, and we were drinking water like crazy, and Bonanza was on. So there was kind of a bleak environment for a child, yeah, we wanted to stay at Grandma's at the house because they had a pool, but there was not enough people around to supervise two boys swimming in a pool. And my grandma, she's my grandma, and she shouldn't be, given that responsibility to try and save two boys if something happened. Anyways, I digress. We're getting off topic, but Bonanza is the subject. This is a fun little tin cup. A friend of mine gave me this, Heather. She's a big-time Bonanza fan. And, this is a really nice piece. I love it because it reminds me of my grandfather. And the Ponderosa ranch was a thing. I think it's still even there, but it's in Nevada, and it was an attraction. They filmed the show there a lot, and they, there was also a theme park type of thing where you could go and visit the sets of the program and whatnot. So, yeah, it's fun stuff. Now, as an adult now, I've gotten back into westerns to a healthy degree because it reminds me of my grandfather, and I miss him. I do. And being kind of taking on that tradition of his tastes kind of preserves his legacy to a degree, I'd like to think. But this cowboy hat, it's a Stetson. I love this hat. It's pretty cool. It's probably my favorite cowboy hat I own. But with the profile, the style is definitely 50s TV style. It is. It really is kind of the Cartwright look. It's the Little Joe style, I guess you could say. So, very popular in the 50s and 60s is this brand or style of cowboy hat. The shallow crown. I think it suits me well. What do you think? You think so? I think so. Anyways, we're going to talk about lanterns Now, just as a sidetrack, this is the very Defiance that I shared last week. It's burning now. I sealed the found up, and it burns very well. So, and yes, I did use the match strike. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think this is a win-win. It's a great piece. I've been actually using it quite a bit since I got it fixed. I got it fixed on the 4th of July. Too many F's. I'm getting fouled up here. 4th of July, I got this thing going, and it's been burning since. And I've been using it outside a lot since I've been doing some more grilling, barbecuing. So anyways. What do we start with? The Lanterns of Bonanza? Let's do it. Okay, now we all understand TV Westerns were never known for their authenticity, whether it's wardrobe, set design, or background ephemera. So, what was the actual time period of Bonanza? What was the target decade? Well, it was the 1860s. In the 1860s, we're 100 years ago from the 1960s. So 1960s to 1860s, they were celebrating 100 years of history, Western frontier stuff. And that definitely was very obvious in the 50s and 60s because the Western genre exploded. And a lot of the shows that we enjoyed from the 50s and into the 60s actually started as radio. That's right, like the Six-Shooter and Have Gun Will Travel, Paladin, of course, Gunsmoke, that was a huge radio program. And so a lot of radio shows became television shows. And in radio, you didn't have to do a darn thing with set dressing. Not at all. You had a Foley guy that did all the sound effects. You had some guys with a table of noisemakers and doors to do all sorts of different sound effects for the program. It was very simplistic. It was very primitive, but it got the job done. However, when you got into the television genre, you had to provide a set, you had to provide background and set dressing and a lot more things to make an episode click. Now, the 1860s, we all know, at least I hope we do, we understand that was pretty much a tubular-free zone. The decade of the 1860s was really the tail end of that decade that saw tubular lanterns come to being. I think some of the earliest examples were made by the Chicago Lantern Company out of Chicago, Illinois, and that was in the mid to late 60s. But definitely after the Civil War. I don't think there was one tubular lantern that was available during the Civil War. So it was all post-Civil War is when tubular lanterns really started to kind of creep into the scene. But that's the start. 66, 67... that's when the earlier patents started being applied for. But the 70s definitely had lanterns, definitely tubular lanterns. Prior to that, it was mostly candle or dead flame, whale oil style lamps. But anyways, what's the first one that we all recognize and see from that show? Well, I'll leave that to the last because we all have a little chuckle over this one. But I'll start off with a lantern that does appear on Bonanza, and that would be this. That's right, the Dietz Acme Inspector. How does this appear on the show? Well, I'll tell you. If you look around the Ponderosa on the porch, you will see an Acme Inspector, and you will see several throughout Virginia City on the set there. Also, the other ones that you'll see are the Track Walkers, which was this lantern, but with added little features, like two little side windows on either side with a little shroud so it would face light sort of forward, and also had a little trap door on the back so you could slide it open and allow light to pass through to the lens on the back so you could people could see you from behind if you're walking on the track the right of way. If some crew on a speeder or a handcart were coming up on you, they would see you because of the light shining through the back of the reflector. Now, the reflector, the mercury glass back here on a track walker, has perforations to allow light to pass through the back. It's cool, but then you could also close that little door. I'll insert a picture of a track walker as I'm talking so you can get the idea. But I don't own one. I just have the Acme Inspector. But you will see these hanging off of walls of buildings or porches or cabins or whatnot periodically in the series. So Acme Inspector definitely appears on Bonanza. The other one, Now this one I left alone. I haven't done anything. I haven't really touched this lantern yet. It's on the list of revitalization, but I wanted to share it just as it is because it does factor into the set of Bonanza.
Morning, Mr. Cartwright. Hello, little Joe.
Morning, Daisy.
Morning, Daisy. You look pretty as a peach tree in the rain.
Oh.
Well, let me give you a hand with those.
I can handle them. Morning, Daisy. I'll be with you in a minute.
Seems to be getting along pretty well at its job, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't go, Daisy. This is the last of the load. Whoa! Wow!
Now this is of course a Dietz high-low. It's painted silver. A lot of lanterns on most westerns were painted silver, especially if they were hanging in a general store scenario. If they were in a hardware store, they would paint them silver to look like brand new tin lanterns, and that was just production's quick and easy way of making them look new again. And it worked, because in the background you'll say, oh, look at that new looking lantern, holy cow, did they still make them for the show? No, they took old lanterns and painted them, and that's pretty much what they did. So this could be from a TV show, it could have been painted recently, I don't know, but who's to tell? It does represent the high-lows that, or other lanterns for that matter, that you will see on Bonanza. Now, there's an episode that I really enjoy of Bonanza, and it's only got really Haas in it, and an old man. Let's see, what was it? Let me look it up here. best not guess here. A Friend of Walter's, 1963. Yep, that is a good one. Yeah, and it stars, let me look it up here. Let's see. Yeah, attacked by outlaws. Haas takes cover. Let's see. Prospector's shack with the old prospector and with Walter, the old man's dog. Let's see here. Who stars in that one? Who's the old man? Arthur Honeycutt. Yeah, that's right. It's Arthur Honeycutt. Yeah, he's the old man, he's the old prospector. And the dog, Walter, actually appears in other shows of the 60s, like the Dick Van Dyke Show, also the Andy Griffith Show. He was a well-known dog that would appear on television.
Yeah, they tried to kill me, too.
Could have been a trick to get you in here.
Now, wait a minute. I ain't got nothing to do with them fellers. I don't know who they are even. I'm from the Ponderosa. My name's Hoss Cartwright.
Water. Fella here says he's a Mr. Cartwright. Oh, did you see that?
See what?
The way Walter took to you.
He did?
Yes, sir. I never seen anything like the way he took to you. You'll have to excuse Walter for not getting up. He's had a hard day.
Yeah, that's all right.
Make yourself to home. I bet you could eat.
Yeah, I forget. Is the dog even listed in the episode here? No, he's not. Well, he should be. He was definitely a key player in that episode. But A Friend of Walter. You can find it on YouTube, and it's absolutely hilarious, and it's really sweet. And there's a high-low. There's a high-low that's right on the table, and I'll insert a picture that I like from that episode that you'll see. But it's great because, they're held up in this shack, and these bandits are trying to get the gold that the old man has. And, they end up, of course, shooting it out, and everything's fine. But it's funny because they're waiting it out, and they're playing checkers, and there's this high-low burning on the table. And then also Haas gets hungry. Of course, Haas gets hungry. It's Dan Blocker. And so they're eating beans, and they're very, very spicy beans. And, it's funny to see Haas not able to handle the spice. But it's comedy. It's a good episode. I highly recommend that one. But there is a high-low used a lot in that episode, and it's a slightly later one. It has the cross guards instead of the Y. When they crossed over, 30s, 40s example. But yeah, they had ones that were distressed, that were kind of rusty, and then ones that they painted silver to emulate new lanterns that you could purchase. But yeah, Dietz high-low, definitely a permanent fixture on many sets of Western TV shows and movies of the 50s and 60s. Now, there is another one that will appear on Bonanza before I get to the best one or the most recognizable one. So excuse me 1 second. I forgot to bring it over. My fault, not yours. Let's see. And you will be glad that I brought over because it's a great piece. Yes. All right. All right. There we go. The ham number 20 side lamp or searchlight. Yeah, this one's got the Japanning on it. So traces of Japanning left. Now, where was these found on the show? Do you really need me to tell you? Well, of course, not everybody's looking at the background like I do. I'm kind of like that guy that will pick an inaccurate flea on an inaccurate dog and behind the principal actors, you know. But this one's about circa 1900, 1905, give or take. But this you will find on the exterior of buildings, outside of jails, or other cabins as kind of a porch light. So you will see CT ham number 20s or other searchlight type of shrouded lamps like this, cold blast ones. Absolutely. Yes, you will see them often on the set of Bonanza and other Western films. Now, cold blasts, we understand that cold blasts really weren't around in the 1860s. I mean, most tubular lanterns weren't around until like the later part of the decade, as we've said in the opening part of the film. But they do make quite many appearances in Western TV shows of that era in the 60s and 70s. Now, cold blasts, whether it's a Dietz Jr., Dietz Blizzard, Streamline or not, D-Light, you got it. You'll see it, and that's definitely something you will notice if you pay close attention. But the one that we'll all recognize, one that many of us love and adore, is this guy. That's right. The Dietz Blue Streamline Monarch of the 1950s is the Western Lantern. Yes. And I will insert photos from the set of Bonanza where these turn up. And, you know, the reason why I have this lantern is mainly because I've had it since I was 11 years old. We go back a long ways, don't we? We sure do. And this lantern I bought just up the street at an antique store that's no longer there anymore. I wish it was. It was probably my favorite local antique mall. But I bought this there for $25. It came with a ruby globe. I swapped them out a long time ago. But this globe has a special story behind it too. And I'll tell more about this. I think I covered it in a video way long ago, back in 2019. But this little guy here is the Western Lantern. It really is. If you watch Gunsmoke, The Rifleman, all those shows, you will see the Monarch. Even if it's a black and white Western, you will see this silhouette, this shape, and you'll probably know for sure that it's a blue lantern, just because you know. I mean, it's true. The Monarch was made all the way into the 1960s out of Syracuse. And then when they started making them in China, or Hong Kong rather, in the 60s and 70s, then they destroyed the tooling for the Streamline Lantern because it was pretty worn out by that point, because it was being used since 1937, clear up into the 1960s. So it was pretty worn out. So when they moved production completely for Tubulars to Hong Kong, they destroyed all the tooling for the Streamline Lanterns. Now, there is one lantern that you can still get relatively brand new. That Streamline that still has this shape and design, that's made by Dietz, and that would be the number 8 Air Pilot. Is the only Streamline lantern you can buy from Dietz to this very day. Now, they're limited supply because their production is much lower than it was before the Chinese government took over. Anyways, Dietz Monarch Streamline. Now, many of you guys might like these. You might have a very soft spot for these. I have a soft spot for this one because of its history with me. But, I mean, I'm not crazy about this style. I do like a Streamline Dietz, but mostly the cold blast ones. You know, I have a few. But this one sticks around just because of its sentimental value and connection to my collecting and early on. But I like you. You're it's good to have something that I've had for so long still around. It is. And it burns fine. It burns great. And when I got back into lanterns in the 2016, 17, right around there, I did notice that the burner cone was all getting to get rusty a little bit. So the last time I cleaned that burner cone was in the early 1990s, late 80s. Yeah. Yes, with a wire brush and some rust abater product from Amway, because my parents used to be in Amway, so I used some type of rust scrub thing that Amway provided. Anyways, it worked, but I did my WD-40 and Scotch pad type of scrub on the burner cone, and it came out really nice, and it looks much better now. And it rusted between the late 80s to the early teens or mid-teens, late teens. So that's almost 40 years. Not bad, right? But yeah, this thing still works just fine. I've had this on many campouts, and it still has the same wick that it was in it when I bought it. Yeah, and I'm not changing that. It works fine, and it's still pretty clean inside. This is actually a really good example, and it's a good piece. And I know I have no real reason to dislike the Streamline Monarch, other than it's just a aesthetic preference. I like my Hot Blast to have jagged corners. I like my square tubes, but the more I look at this, the more I'm kind of like glad I still have this, because I've had it for so long. But anyways, that's the stuff. We'll just keep this up here. That's the stuff. TV Westerns, Bonanza, lanterns that are historically very inaccurate, but a lot of us got exposure to lanterns because of those shows, and I know that I was definitely one of them. And I remember watching Bonanza or even Little House on the Prairie and seeing kerosene lanterns were streamlined. Michael Landon didn't have any idea or specific need for authentic lanterns for Little House or any of the other programs he produced. It's so funny because I grew up with Michael Landon programs. My parents watched Little House and, of course, Highway to Heaven and all that. And it's funny because even on Little House, you see these streamlined lanterns. And then even in episodes of Highway to Heaven, if they were out in a rural area and they had a lantern, there was always some lantern that would pop up in a scene, even on that program, which was a contemporary program, and there was no Western background or anything, but you would still see one of these lanterns making an appearance in the background on Highway to Heaven, which I would assume was not only just because people were still using these in the 80s for camping, but I think maybe Michael Landon was giving a nod to his Western heritage in TV. Yes, I would like to think that was part of the deal, but I mean, a lot of his co-stars came from Little House. Absolutely. Yeah, if you watch that show, then you will see a lot of people, especially his, Mark. I forget what was his name. What was his name on the actor that played Mark? He was on Little House all the time, so they went way back. But anyway, 80s nostalgia, But yeah, the Dietz Monarch. This is the lantern. This is the ultimate TV Western lantern. And I'm sure some of you are enjoying this and laughing a bit because of how accurate that is. So, yeah, that's it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and this look at television's lantern choices. And, I do know as a kid, and I would see these things, and I kind of was impressed by them. I kind of liked the idea of it. And then, of course, going to theme parks like Disneyland or Knott's Berry Farm and seeing a lot of these things around too kind of gave me the itch to own one. And it wasn't until I remember being at Yosemite when I was probably 5-6 years old and going to an amphitheater and actually seeing them work. Not being electrified, but working outside of in Wawona. Yeah, and they were painted blue, just like this. I think they were D-lights or Little Wizards, but anyways. The smell and the warm light pushing against the descending darkness of the campsites and stuff and Yosemite. That kind of did it. I knew I had to have one. Yeah, so here we are now. 43, 44 years later, almost. And I have a lot of these beautiful old lanterns, and they're fun to use and collect and enjoy. So I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad you guys join me and enjoy this hobby that I recently, more or less, discovered is really quite the thing. It is a real collectible now. And I didn't know that up until the 2010s or 2016. And I discovered Bob the Lantern Guy's videos. And I had thought always that I was one of the only weird guys that liked old lanterns. And I didn't know it was a real big collectible. And now I'm enjoying it. And great friendships and camaraderie with some really cool collectors and people out there who enjoy the same thing. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate your friendship, your subscriptions, and you continuing to follow my humble little channel. So with that being said, we'll be back next week with another project or another lantern to share. And yeah, sounds fun. We keep on going. Keep on going. All right. Saddle up and head them on out. All right. We'll see you again in a week's time. Bye-bye.